Is anybody hearing those bells? Can you hear them? All right, well. And then we're just starting. That's fine, but we're just starting our press conference. You rolling? Good morning. Now, we thought we'd be able to hear those bells, but the For Whom the Bells Toll project is a project of death penalty action that asks faith communities to talk with their communities and to express their opposition to the death penalty by tolling their bells or otherwise creating a visible presence like the sign that you see in front of this podium. And we've got people from all across Utah and especially all across Salt Lake City area, and especially those among the Catholic Diocese of Salt Lake City, which has been really incredibly forward in expressing its opposition. We're going to hear about that in a moment. My name is Abraham Bonowitz. I'm the Director of Death Penalty Action, and we are here at the invitation of folks here in Utah to help lift up the visibility of this issue and the fact of an execution happening today for the first time in 14 years in Utah. The fact is that millions of Utahns oppose the death penalty. They're just not the people that hold signs and come out. When you offer the opportunity to choose death by execution or death by incarceration, especially when people actually understand how the system fails us over and over and over again, more people choose death by incarceration rather than execution. I will share with you also that any moment now I'm going to have a message indicating that our lawsuit has been filed seeking an injunction on the execution, which will, until the Department of Corrections finds an alternative free speech area more adjacent to the prison. It's unconscionable and ridiculous that they're going to set the media and protesters 2 miles away. So that's coming, and you'll see a separate press release about that. But today we're here to deliver thousands of petition signatures as well as a letter signed by 100 so far leaders in the Utah community. And here to lead us off by reading that letter, and we've got a copy of it for each of you, and it's also in your press release, is Michelle Beasley with the Diocese of Salt Lake City and also a leader of this renewed effort here in Utah. Michelle Beasley.
Thank you, Abe. The letter reads, "We are calling upon you as leaders and policymakers in Utah to prohibit the imposition of the death penalty for any violation of federal or state law and for other purposes. As people of faith and our conscience who live in Utah, we are committed to policies rooted in justice and grounded in the promise of redemption. While we come from varied backgrounds and political stances, we stand together against the state having the power or obligation to kill in the names of all who live here. Instead, we're motivated by the restorative power of love and investments in transformation. We hold deep love and respect for victims and co-victims of crime, and we most certainly are not opposed to accountability for rightfully convicted persons. However, we believe that the death penalty serves no moral purpose, and executions are not necessary to keep society safe or to hold accountable those who have committed horrible crimes. Instead, it's a hollow instrument of death that offers no redemption, no closure, and no transformation. The death penalty monopolizes human and financial resources that would better be spent if applied to the co-victims whose glaring list of needs often goes unmet, and to increased efforts to prevent violent crime. Now is the time for Utah to rid itself of this outdated and immoral method of punishment. Institutionalized killing contributes to the brutalization of society. Such a final and heinous decision should not be left to the discretion of flawed humans and a broken system too flawed to fix. As people motivated by faith and are sparked by profound love and are concerned for the common good, we are calling on you to stop executions in our state and support and pass legislation to end executions in Utah forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Next, I want to welcome Father Ken from the Diocese of Salt Lake City.
Governor Cox, Lieutenant Governor Henderson, and Father Ken from the Diocese of Salt Lake City, on behalf of Most Reverend Bishop A. Solis and the Catholic Diocese of Salt Lake City, I would like to present this petition which presents and represents our stance against the death penalty. Archbishop Fulton Sheen, a well-known Catholic priest and teacher, especially on television and radio, said that one day when he went to celebrate a mass in the prison, he told the inmates, "The only difference between you and me is that you got caught. The only difference between you and me is that you got caught." Archbishop Fulton Sheen's statement reflected his ability to connect with all people by recognizing the fact that we are all members of one body in Christ. And therefore, when one member of our family is suffering, the whole family suffers. When one member of the body is hurting, the whole body is hurting. Meaning that you and I, we're all in this together and are called to be our brothers and our sisters' keeper by promoting justice, not vengeance, by promoting life, not death. As our brother and sister's keeper, the Catholic Church teaches that the death penalty is inadmissible, no matter the seriousness of the crime, because capital punishment is an offense against the inviolability of life and the dignity of the human person, which contradicts God's plan for man and society, which does not render justice to the victims and their families, but rather fosters vengeance. In Bishop Oscar Solis' recent statements, he points out that we are our brothers and sisters' keeper by stating, "Dear brothers and sisters, as the state of Utah prepares to execute Mr. Honey, I must ask all of you to stand up against the blatant disregard for the sanctity of life and to urge our senators and representatives to end the cruel and inhumane practice of taking life through state-sanctioned executions. The death penalty does nothing but repay suffering with suffering. It does not provide justice, does not restore dignity, does not make us safer as a society. Anytime we allow the intentional destruction of life, we destroy respect for all life." Bishop Oscar states, "We are called to continually pray for the victims of crime and their families and friends, that they may find peace and healing in God's boundless love. We must also pray particularly for the soul of Claudia Ben, whom Tabarone was convicted of murdering 25 years ago. We also pray for Mr. Honey, that he, like all sinners, might find peace in God's eternal judgment." Thank you.
Father Ken, can you restate your name for everybody, your full name and title?
Yes, I'm Father Kenneth Vilpando, the Vicar of Clergy for the Diocese of Salt Lake City.
Thank you, Father Ken. Next, I would like to introduce Nicholas Cote, with conservatives concerned about the death penalty. Nicholas?
Conservatives Concerned About the Death Penalty is a national network of political and social conservatives who question the alignment of capital punishment with conservative principles and values. Conservatives are concerned about the death penalty because it is a wasteful and expensive government program that fails victims' families and does not improve public safety. Lengthy death penalty cases prolong the pain of victims' families, dragging out their pain for years or even decades, often for a sentence to be reversed or an execution never to be carried out. Taxpayer dollars can be more effectively allocated to investigate cold cases, alleviate family suffering, and end or prevent violence before it happens. Conservatives are concerned about the death penalty because the risk of executing an innocent person is real and unacceptable. Every government program deserves public scrutiny, but virtually no other area of public policy will lead to a mistake, meaning the loss of an innocent life. Wrongful convictions need not result from bad actors, coerced confessions, or junk science. Mistakes happen despite the best efforts of police, forensic scientists, witnesses, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and judges. For a matter of life and death, one innocent mistake is one too many. Conservatives are concerned about the death penalty because even when culpability is not in question, capital punishment is arbitrarily and unfairly administered by government. Not justice, but geography, race, poverty, and the broad discretion of the prosecutor are often what determines whether or not somebody is sentenced to death. Arbitrariness in sentencing suggests that some lives are worth more than others and instills public distrust in the legal system. Society can and should hold accountable those who cause harm, but the government should not arbitrarily sentence some to the ultimate and irreversible punishment, unnaturally ending their opportunities to seek redemption. As a matter of public policy, the death penalty is broken and cannot be fixed. It creates more harm and perpetuates trauma. It is security theater, and yet it is also shrouded in secrecy. Instead of continuing this inefficient, ineffective, and unfair death penalty system, we should divert our resources to solutions that actually promote safety, healing, and accountability. Thank you. Nicholas Cody, Conservatives concerned about the death penalty.
Thank you, Nicholas. Want to make it clear that Death Penalty Action does not endorse any particular candidates for office, but we do talk about public policy and about how candidates stand for public policy. And one of the candidates for office here is standing against the death penalty as the candidate for governor of the Libertarian Party here in Utah. So welcome, Rob Latham.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Rob Latham. The platform of the Libertarian Party joins with most moral and ethical traditions in opposing the administration of the death penalty by the state. I will be on our ballot this election to replace the incumbent governor because the Utah in which I was born and raised can provide a better example than continuing a barbaric practice that much of the civilized world is leaving behind. About monthly, I pass through the prison gates in Gunnison and here in Salt Lake and interact with Department of Corrections staff to assist my clients incarcerated there who I am court appointed to represent. When one has gone to court in Manti and Sanpete County, where the current governor was a county commissioner, there's been an elk trophy hanging in one of the stairwells that bears the name of a deputy prosecutor. Like the incumbent governor, I graduated from law school in the 1990s. The tragic crime in 1998, which brings us here today, was followed by a conviction and sentence the following year in 1999. A lot has changed in a quarter century since then. If I were governor, I'd do all I could to protect Department of Corrections employees from being complicit in the intentional termination of life, the victims' families from continuing to be used as political pawns, and the people of Utah from having to bear witness to another state-sponsored killing. I'd follow the example of Oregon's former governor, who in 2011 issued a reprieve of a death sentence until the end of his term and went to the Oregon Supreme Court to vindicate his reprieve authority. By the way, in 2015, Pennsylvania's governor also issued a reprieve for a death sentence, which was upheld by his state Supreme Court. Like Oregon and Pennsylvania, Utah's state constitution grants a governor reprieve authority. It's at Article 7, Section 12, Subsection 3. I read the incumbent's letter yesterday that a governor reprieve under our Utah state constitution would only last a day. I don't buy that. and we shouldn't allow ourselves to be gaslit like that. Rather than have a human trophy, if I were claiming to be a pro-life governor, I'd try a little harder to promote a culture of life in Utah. If I had to as a pro-life governor, I'd renew that reprieve every day. I'd go to court if necessary to assert the governor's reprieve authority and protect the life of someone who no one seriously argues is a safety threat while incarcerated. I reject the arguments made by the state's attorneys that revenge is a valid justification to keep the death penalty rather than abolish it. Death by incarceration, life without parole, ultimately yields similar outcomes. And rather than spend $200,000 on a drug that, when used as prescribed here, is fatal, might that money be better used for restitution and healing? What Utah's ruling political class doesn't want to say out loud is that the death penalty is state-sponsored terrorism, and terror is one tool they use to protect their power and privilege. The person in Oregon whose death sentence was reprieved by that state's governor in 2011 had that sentence commuted 2 years ago to life without parole by a successor governor. Now, we don't have commutation in Utah's criminal legal system, and I call it that because the system not administered justly is not rightly called a system of justice. Let's consider adding commutation, at least until we can truly call it a justice system. In closing, I'll leave you with former Oregon Governor Brown's words, quote, "Justice is not advanced by taking a life, and the state should not be in the business of executing people, even if a terrible crime placed them in prison." And I'm Rob Latham. I'm a Libertarian candidate for governor in Utah. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob, for those powerful words, and Father Ken and Nicholas and Michelle. And I want to acknowledge, and they're available for one-on-ones afterwards, my friend and colleague Suzanne Bosler, who spoke the other day at our event on Sunday as a murder victim family member, and herself a survivor of an attempted murder, who can speak to this issue, as well as Charles Keith, who is the Impacted Communities Liaison for Death Penalty Action, and we are here in support of Randy Gardner, our next speaker, who is the brother of the last person executed. And before Randy comes up, I do want to also acknowledge that that when it comes to this issue and what's being done here today, you know, $200,000 to get the execution drugs. That's why one of our signs here says no profiting from executions, because somebody's making a killing here, and we should be asking that question, who it is. I have helped several dogs and cats on their way to the next whatever it is, euthanizing them at the end of their lives using pentobarbital. For less than $400, I've helped a dog get put down and cremated. So how is it that it's costing the state of Utah $200,000, even for 3 or 4 doses, whatever it is that they bought? Somebody is making a profit here, and that should outrage everyone. We don't take a position on how we kill our prisoners. We take a position that killing prisoners when the system is as broken as it is outrageous, unconscionable, immoral, and should be found unconstitutional. But the worst thing about what this does to the victim families of the person who is murdered is ask them to prolong their healing process for decades. Wait until we kill the guy, then you'll feel better. Well, I hope that works out for the victim's family in this case. But in doing so, we will create another murder victim family, and that's the family of Tabarone Honey. And to speak to that issue and to his own experience is the family member, the brother of the last person executed by firing squad here in Utah 14 years ago. Randy Gardner.
Good morning. Thanks for coming out. It's pretty hot out here, so we'll get this going quick. Again, my name is Randy Gardner. June 18th, 2010, my younger brother, Ronnie Lee Gardner, was executed by firing squad. That day is one that lives on forever in me. You know, I've since been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress because of it. I tried to deal with this kind of stuff on my own. 8 years it took me. It's been 14, but 8 years. And I woke up one morning and I found the forgiveness factor. And forgiveness is what helped me get through this. I'm on state disability because of this, and I have nightmares all the time, not as often lately, about me executing my mother, about me executing my kids executing me. You know, my poor mother in a wheelchair who's since passed, saying, "Why, Randy, why?" as I pull the trigger and blow my mother's heart out. You know, this is the kind of stuff that this does to us people. It's the collateral damage of what we call the death penalty. And it's just not right, and it's not a moral thing that we should be executing our own citizens. We don't trust the government and most things of what they do. Why do we give them the trust to get it right and to kill somebody? It's just not right. And then we have the issues of people that are on death row that were falsely accused and convicted. There's over 200 since 1973, since reinstated the death penalty, that have been in prison, have been exonerated for a crime they never commit. I have probably 50 friends that I've met over the course of the last 14 years that are part of that group. It's definitely a club that you don't want to belong to. Same with me. We're going to create Tabor and Homies family. Excuse me. There's people on both sides on that case, but it's going to correct victims on both sides. I just think that, yeah.
Good. Take your time.
Okay. Yeah, my biggest point is that it's unethical, it's immoral. We have people like Death Penalty Action and all these people that have come out to support this execution, and we're not supporting it for it, we're supporting against the execution. And you know, hopefully one day in the near future Utah will step it up and end state-sanctioned murders. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Are there any questions? We're available for what? Yes, ma'am.
Well, can you talk more about the lawsuit you intend to file? What impact do you feel like that will have?
So our friend asked about the lawsuit that's been filed or is about to be filed. I'm still waiting for the text from an attorney who is doing that for us. Essentially, we're asking to be in proximity to the prison, meaning, as you'll see in the press release, we've given you some images from yesterday when Suzanne and Charles and Randy and I stood outside, right outside the gates of the prison with no problem. The police came and checked us out and left us alone, no problem. And you know, we protest in front of executions all over the country. There's an execution this evening in Texas, and we will be managing a live virtual vigil, so bringing people together via Zoom and in person at the prison in Texas, in Huntsville, Texas. Florida, Ohio, Georgia, South Carolina's getting ready to resume executions. Louisiana's getting ready to resume executions. Most recently, we've been in Alabama. And in all these places where we can, well, except Alabama, here in all these other places, we can see the prison clearly. We can be seen from the prison. And we just think that it makes sense for the people that are in the prison, the staff, and the prisoners, and everybody that has to do with this execution has to deal with seeing this opposition. That's the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, is we have a right to free speech, but we also have a right to be heard. And we can't be heard if we're not in proximity to the prison.
Has the state given you an explanation as to why they put it where they did?
I had a fair amount of back and forth with the warden Bart. We're on a first name basis now. We've had a fair amount of conversation back and forth by email. And, you know, he's gone through the process that he's got. I can't fault him for anything that he's doing. He's been very gracious with us, and you know, I don't expect to hold up the execution. I don't expect that we'll that we will have even any delays, but we'll see what the court decides. Because if the state is in violation of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, then we, the people, are entitled to relief. Other questions?
Has the family, has either side of on both sides, have you been in conversations with any of the families at all?
Randy has had a little bit of communication, but we have not, and Taber Honey has acknowledged what we're up to and appreciated those who are standing in opposition, but no, we have not had direct communication with the family or the prisoner in this case. All right, we've got a few minutes for one-on-ones, and then we're going to gather. We're going to walk up the stairs and deliver our letter and our petition to the governor, and I have copies of that for anybody that would like them here. So thank you very much for coming, and in a few minutes we're going to ascend the stairs so you can prepare those who want to come and walk with us to the governor's office. I'm going to need one volunteer to stay with all our stuff here.
These doors are locked.
They're going to open them.